All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And when I stopped last time, I was in Chapter 7 of our Starting Out with Java Early Objects 5th edition book by Tony Gaddis. We're writing some Java programs now, and I've been kind of beating almost to death this payroll program. So I've got both the payroll program that I've fixed up a little bit, plus I've got a couple of other array programs that I've written. So I'm going to go over those, and if there's time, I've also written a very short little palindrome program to go over the Chapter 8 material. So from our textbook, just so you're aware of this, I have now done programs for chapters 1 through 6, Intro to Java, Fundamentals, first look at classes and objects, decision structures, loops and files, and a second look at classes and objects. So I've done the first 6. All right, I'm doing 7 right now. I don't have an array list program. I may provide one of those later, depending on my time. All right, I've also done chapter 15. So I'm going to do finish 3 array programs right now, and then go over a program for chapter 8. So what I've got left to go is inheritance, and I should be able to do that with the payroll program. Exceptions, I again should be able to do that with a payroll program. GUI applications part 1, for that one what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a payroll program, not a payroll program, I'm sorry, the Brandy's Bagel that's in the book. For chapter 12, I'm actually not sure. I might do the payroll program, and that may very well be it then. We'll see. For chapter 13, I'm going to do one of the applets that are out of the book. For chapter 14, I'm not going to do the Java FX. Instead, I'm going to use a product, probably at least, called Window Builder. I've done 15 already, and we'll see about 16. Just so you have some kind of a clue as to what's going on and where I am. All right? So the payroll program, what I did was I cleaned it up substantially. It looks a lot nicer than it did before. As always, right here, I have my declare program constants. I wish I'd moved all that stuff over, and I didn't. Maybe I'll do that later. So this is declare, and of course, when you declare, you also initialize. And let's copy that here, but these are the program variables. All right. Protected static, of course, those two those are the program class variables. In other words, they're shared by each instance of the class. These, oops, I don't know what I did there. Are the program instance variables. So the class variables, so these are shared, these are not. All right. So as I work my way down here, I'm going to move these over. All right, then we have our constructor where everything is passed in, and I wanted to show you something here. What I'm showing you, it's not gee whiz, it's not anything that's all that cool or anything, but I did want to show it to you. Firstly, I added Java doc comments right here. All right, and you say, what do those do? I'd like to show you in just a couple minutes. Secondly, for each one of these, each one of our 4 fields here, and I'm just going to show you the first one right now. I've written this. First of all, I add 1 to my count because I've got a new employee. But I'm saying here first name, I'm saying after you trim, which means get rid of any leading blanks and any trailing blanks in case the user just tried to hit the space bar. So if after you trim the leading and trailing blanks, if what's left is not equal to the empty string, so in other words, if there's something in it, then take that something and assign it to first name. Otherwise, assign FNU unknown to first name. Now that's the same thing as if I had done this. So this is another way of writing it right here. All right, so I've taken what was in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code and replaced it with 1 line of code. All right, then I do the exact same thing for last name. And really, they're very much mirror images of one another, except I'm changing first to last. Other than that, it's the same code. All right, so I'm not going to go over that, but let's take a look at these, because hours and rate are again the same thing, except I'm using different variables with different constants. But what I'm saying here, move this one over, and then we'll take a quick look. Is if the hours that we entered is both greater than min hours, so that's 0, and it's less than max hours. Now, did I change this? I was thinking of changing that to a 1. I did change min hours to 1. So I said that the person has to work at least 1 hour, so that should be greater than or equal to. So again, this one line that says, if the person has worked between 1 and 84 hours, take that number they put in and assign it to hours. If it's out of range, meaning it's less than 1 or greater than 84, then assign 0 to hours. And again, that is the same exact thing as if I had done this. So again, I'm replacing 8 lines of code, albeit the fact that 4 of those 8 lines are just curly braces. But still, even 4 lines of code, I'm replacing with 1 line of code. And then I do the exact same thing here for the rate. So all I wanted to show you were different ways, different sides of the same coin, whatever you want to call it. But different ways that you can go and do the same type of operation. Same thing here. As long as rate is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 100, accept it. Otherwise, set it equal to 0. You don't have to put spaces in there. I think it just looks a little nicer if there are some spaces. All right? So that's the first constructor when everything is passed in. The second constructor is known as our no-arg constructor because nothing is passed in. So if that's the case, we just automatically do set first name to FNU unknown, last name to LNU unknown for first name unknown, last name unknown, hours to 0, and rate to 0. Okay? Then we've got our getters and setters. Again, you'll notice the presence of Java doc comments here. And I said this before, I want to say it again. When you do a getter, you pass nothing in, but you return something. So you must put the return type in there. On the other hand, when you do a setter, which is what this one is, oh, I'm sorry, I guess I've got all my getters together first. So this is the same thing, returning last name, which is a string. There is actually some debate in the Java community. Should you put all your getters, then all your setters, or should you put the getter and then the matching setter? You can see I put all the getters first. Should have a space there. So should that. So those are all of my getters. Again, these two are returning numeric values, so the return type is double. Then I've got the setters. Oh, I guess one more thing. I've got the getter for gross pay. Remember, so we don't have stale data. We don't even have a set. So anytime you call the get for gross pay, you're going to figure out the latest and greatest gross pay, and you're going to add to total gross pay accumulator. All right, then we return the total gross, the gross, not the total gross. Remember, we can only return one thing at a time, and that's the way it works in most programming languages. So here's our get tot gross, all right, and our get count, so we can get exactly how many employees we had. That finally brings us to our sets. With a set, again, you never return anything, or very rarely return anything, so the return type is void, but you must have a parameter passed in. That parameter that you pass in must be the same type as the class variable or instance variable that you're trying to set. I guess instance variable. So we've got the first name and the last name. The hours, and again, you can notice that what I have done here is all I'm checking here, and I really should have put the same check that I put in up here. So for hours, it should be that check. Oops. And again, all I'm trying to do is, for lack of better words, good programming, responsible programming, whatever you want to call it. All right, so that'll fix that one, and let's grab the other one for our rate. There's hours and there's rate. All right, and that's the end of our class. So I'm going to save that. Now let's look at our driver. Should look familiar to you by now. We've done a lot of this work here. All right. I first came and set up a constant called totemps. We are working here with arrays. It's chapter 7. We're working with arrays. So I'm going to have a maximum of 5 employees. Then we create an array of these payroll objects, and we tell that the size is totemps. Quite often you do it like this, but we could have just put a 5 in there. That would have been totally fine. But later, if I decide I'm going to add more employees and that becomes 25, I only have to change it there and nowhere else. Just recompile the program and I'm okay. So that's our program constant. These are our program variables. These right here, I guess that's also a program variable. All of these really are. All right. And what I decided to do, and I went back and spent a little time, I had to do a little bit of investigatory work on this because it had been a while since I've done anything like this. So what I did here was I said for each employee, give me a random number between 1 and 84. And for each employee, give me a random number between 1 and 100. And that's going to be used for the hours for 1 and 84 and the pay rate, the 1 and 100. Then, for that employee, all right, create a new employee object. Their number will be whatever that number is plus 1, because I didn't want the first employee to be 0. All right, their hours will be what we figured out there. Their rate will be what we figure out there. So it's cleaned up a little bit. And even though I probably could have just printed them out while I was creating them, I don't like doing that. So I added here another loop which goes through and for each employee prints out that information. All right. So for instance, it should say payroll object 1, first name, whatever, last name, whatever. And did I set the first name? I don't think I did. Well, we'll run it. We'll see what it looks like. How's that? Then we print out on both the console window the final payroll count and the total gross, and we print it out here also in a J option ping. All right. So I'm going to save this and run it, and we'll see what we have. There's our first employee. The name is just employee. Oh, the last name is number 1. Well, that's not very good. The hours worked are 4. The hourly rate is $94.05. Again, those are randomly generated numbers. There's no overtime, so 94 times 4 is 376. And the 5 actually should have been 20, but it gave me 21. I guess it rounded up there. Second employee does not get overtime either. Third employee only worked an hour. Fourth employee does get overtime because they worked more than 40 hours. The fifth employee does not get overtime. So we got all that. We had said there were 5 employees. That was their total gross. End of program run. Let's run it one more time. And there were our final totals. All right, let's run it one more time. So I'm going to clear out the console here and run it one more time. All right, so the first employee, let's check the totals. You really should always go back. It's much better to be untrusting and find out that you're wrong. So 82, so I need 964. Oops. I need $9.64. That's wrong too. Divide that by 10 again. I need $9.64 times 40. That's their straight time. So that's $385.60. All right. And then they also worked 42 hours times 9.64 times 1.5 equals this, plus whatever that was. It was 300 and something. I think it was 385 something. So you can see it looks at least like it's correct. So the first employee made 993.20. All right. Our next employee, 21, 96 times 21. It looks like it'd be about right. So they made 2,000. Oops. Will you let me remove that last thing that I put in there? 993.20. 993.2 plus 2016.43 plus our third employee, 21 times 20. Well, 21 times 21 would be about 460. So again, it looks like it's pretty close. Okay, so I want to add to that 432.11. Our next employee, 32 times 33, 1,055.16. And our last employee, 60 times 13 would be 780. So again, that looks like it's right at least. So we're going to add to that plus 787.52. So we should have 5 employees, and that should be the total payroll. 5 employees, 52.84.41, so it's within a penny. There can be rounding errors, but again, we've got it there. We also have it right here. So again, 52.84.41, 5 employees. All right. Now, we could have been more exact and probably done some tweaking to make sure that our payroll, since rather than it being off by a penny, was exactly correct. I didn't take the time to do that. So I'm going to come back in just a minute, so I'm going to close everything here. And I'm going to go over the first array program. I wrote this one in a very object-oriented type of manner. There is a driver, and if you look at the driver, it's unbelievably small. All right? And the array program isn't real large. It's a couple hundred lines. So we're going to look at that in just a couple minutes. I'll be back with that shortly.